Following the recent Turkish airstrikes that killed Kurdish fighters allied with the U.S. have had troops patrol a part of the Turkey-Syria border. On Tuesday, at least 25 fighters were reported killed by the People's Protection Unit, YPG, and the Peshmerga in Iraq as a result of the airstrikes. The YPG group have fighters who fight in the U.S.-supported rebel alliance known as the Syrian Democratic Forces. However, the Turkish government considers YPG to be a terrorist group.
This week, small towns in eastern Texas were plagued with tornadoes. Several homes were damaged, vehicles were overturned, and trees were pushed over. According to police officials in the area, the storm killed at least 5 people. Captain Brian Horton from the Canton Fire Department stated, "We're talking about, I think, maybe 5 casualties. That number may go up once we can get into these areas." Overall, 56 people were injured and 6 of them had to be hospitalized. As of now, the authorities are trying to clean out the area and help citizens as best they can.
And Japan has issued its first order for forces to protect U.S. military vessels since new security legislation was enacted last year. The deployment of helicopter carrier Izumo comes amid heightened tension on the Korean Peninsula. And Japan's Kyodo news agency quotes unnamed government sources as saying the Izumo was ordered to leave Yokosuka port on Monday, and the Izumo will escort a U.S. supply ship further into the Western Pacific. Japan's self-defense forces were previously prevented from protecting allied forces, and their use of weapons was restricted to self-defense. But Prime Minister Shinzo Abe managed to expand the SDF's responsibilities. Critics argue that the new legislation erodes Japan's post-war pacifist constitution and could lead to involvement in overseas military actions. There are also expectations Japan may use the tensions on the Korean Peninsula to expand its military role.
For these workers, it can mean the difference between their families eating today or not, waiting in the hope of a day's work that will earn them less than $10. Some are lucky. For others, like bricklayer Ghulam Rasul, who's been here since 5 in the morning, there's only disappointment. He tells us things have been getting worse in the past 2 years, and he's only worked 2 days in the last 3 weeks. On this day, he must return home to his family empty-handed.
When I leave in the morning, I know my children are hoping their father will bring back food, and when I don't, they are so disappointed. The moment you see your daughter hungry, you just want to kill yourself.
This is a country that has become reliant on money from overseas aid and foreign armies, and it's not only the most vulnerable workers who are now suffering. A good education, it seems, is no guarantee of a job.
The United States and South Korea have ended their annual joint Full Eagle military exercise. The largest ever 2-month drill involved some 300,000 South Korean soldiers and 10,000 U.S. troops. Meanwhile, the U.S. nuclear-powered aircraft carrier Carl Vinson has entered waters off the Korean peninsula and is currently involved in another joint exercise with the South Korean Navy. The U.S. has also deployed a nuclear-powered submarine to the region. In response, the DPRK accused Washington of igniting a nuclear war and threatened to strike America to the last man if there was any hint of an attack on its territory.
Authorities said Sunday severe storms, including tornadoes, swept through several small towns in East Texas, killing at least 4 people and injuring dozens more, and leaving a trail of overturned vehicles, mangled trees, and damaged homes. The storms in Texas were among several in parts of the South and Midwest that brought strong winds, thunderstorms, and torrential rain. A total of at least 6 people were killed in 3 states. On Sunday, the storms headed into East Mississippi and Alabama on Sunday. In Texas, a day after storms cut a path of destruction 35 miles long and 15 miles wide in Van Zandt County, search teams were going door-to-door Sunday, Canton Mayor Lou Ann Everett said.
From high above Guatemala's Laguna del Tigre National Park, the damage is clear. Dozens of deliberately set fires tear through vegetation, and officials don't have the resources to stop them. It's a crisis that threatens the largest tropical forest north of the Amazon.
It's like a cancer that's spreading. Today it's a huge problem in this park. Tomorrow it could happen in neighboring conservation zones.
This border zone is a trafficking hotspot. Illegal landing strips and junked drug planes litter the park. But it's so-called narco ranchers and their illegal cattle who are driving the ecological disaster. Criminal groups often use local people to set fires and clear grazing land. The impact on wildlife is devastating, and archaeological sites here in the cradle of Maya civilization are at risk.
I'm standing on top of the ancient Mayan city of El Purito. Scientists had only heard rumors of this place's existence until the middle of March, but by then criminal groups had been here, cut down the trees, burnt the place, and sacked the tombs.
North Korea's show of force with a missile launch fell flat when the missile blew up just a few minutes into flight. After the launch, President Trump sending out a tweet in response saying, quote, North Korea disrespected the wishes of China and its highly respected president when it launched, though it unsuccessfully, a bad missile today. Bad. Here with me now, Jacqueline Klamis. She's a defense reporter with Politico, and she has the very latest. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to ask you, first of all, with your reporting, was there any sense of shock? Was there more of a sense of, well, we kind of saw this coming when we initially heard the reports last night?
I don't know that anyone expected a missile launch necessarily, but the frequency of them certainly has picked up. We saw the president tweet about it, saying that it was disrespectful to the Chinese president. So that suggests that he could speak more with the Chinese about potentially working with them to get North Korea to tone down the rhetoric.
So on that note, from your reporting, what do you gather could take place next, especially because we're seeing, as you said, another attempt?
Right. I mean, I think we'll definitely see President Trump try to work more through the Chinese, through that channel, to try to stop these kind of tests. The USS Carl Vinson is also, it was scheduled to be there late this month, so if it's not already there, it's close. So U.S. military assets will be in the region if the administration decides to go with a military response. But I think right now we're sort of waiting to see what the administration will decide to do.
You've done extensive reporting. I sort of want to shift gears here because we talked a lot about it this week on former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and news developing from the fact that he had been paid to make speeches from a foreign entity, from a foreign government. So I want to sort of bring it back here, and I want to ask you, where was the disconnect? I had read that he had been warned in 2014, and I also think that it was a little bit along the lines of common sense, if I'm not mistaken. So where was the disconnect in all this?
Absolutely. We saw Representative Elijah Cummings release documents this week. We saw this 2014 letter that said you cannot do this. So he can't argue that he didn't know. It's not really clear right now what his thinking was in his doing this. Whether he, thought it was okay, or just kind of, because his lawyers have said that he briefed the Defense Department, but other documents that Representative Cummings released this week said that there's no paper trail, no evidence of that happening.
President Trump is the first sitting president to address the NRA since Ronald Reagan in 1983. Colion Noir is a gun rights activist and member of the NRA. He was at the convention and is here to weigh in. Good morning, sir. So what do you were there in the audience. Give us a sense of the reaction to the president addressing the NRA.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. And by and large, it was celebratory. I think for years now, like he mentioned, we've been relegated to talking about the Second Amendment as if we were advocates for sex trafficking or something. And so now we get to talk about the Second Amendment as the constitutional right that it is. And I think it's incredibly important for not only the members who were there at the annual meetings, but all of Americans to understand the importance of the Second Amendment. And knowing that we have somebody now in the White House who's a champion of that constitutional right is very invigorating.
Colin, you say that the gun environment, the gun group, the community is far more diverse than it's given credit for. What do you think is the biggest misconception when people talk about the NRA?
Well, I think by and large, like there's been a picture that's been painted for decades that going to the annual meetings of the gun community is consistent of nothing but old white men who are racist, looking to hang any black person or any minority that they come across. But yet, over the years that I've been going to the annual meetings and been in this gun community, I've seen an increasing number of minorities, even transgendered individuals, who are now who feel more empowered about coming out and talking about their passion for the Second Amendment. Because I think for the longest part, we've kind of relegated it to being something that's taboo, that you're not allowed to talk about. And if you do talk about it, you're not considered a true minority, or you're not considered a true American. But yet we're talking about a constitutional right here.
Welcome back. Well, liberal elites on a mission to save the earth. Al Gore and Leonardo DiCaprio protesting the president's first 100 days by marching for climate change in D.C. yesterday.
And here to react, host of the news show, The Fox News Specialists, Kat Timpf, is here.
Our own specialist.
Good morning, specialist.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So what do you, well, first of all, what do you think about this big climate change march?
I think it worked. I think everything's perfect now. There's no pollution. The whole world is saved. No, I mean, it's virtue signaling.
Do you think the climate's changing?
Yeah, sure. I think anything that you put into the environment, it's going to affect it just like in any other situation. But there's only so much we can do, particularly just this country. We could, even if we went back to all riding horses and buggies and all of that, it wouldn't make that much of a difference. We would just, destroy our entire economy.
But is Leonardo the right spokesperson?
And did you like the sign that he made? He took a lot of time he put into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Climate change is real.
Yeah,
well, it's busy when you're traveling the world in your jet.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes.
Exactly. But then, he and Al Gore fly around in their jets. But, you got to pick an issue. You got to go with it. You have to show you care about something. He clearly picked the climate. There's only so much we can do in terms of solutions, and they clearly understand that, or else they wouldn't be flying around their jets all the time.
All right, Kat, so the 5 has moved to 9 o'clock, and you are a part of a new show called the Fox News Specialist.
This is so exciting.
It's very exciting, yeah. It's going to be me, Eric Bolling, and Ebony Williams, and then there's going to be 2 guest specialists based on the news of the day.
So it'll be still 5 people.
Yes.
But it's just a different name. So the specialists will be like, they'll come in on either side?
Exactly, and it's going to be based on the news of the day. So the whole idea is that the opinions, 40% of them are going to change based on who the specialists are every single day.
Do you know who they are on Monday?
We're going to have Mark Cuban, I believe, on Monday. And
interesting.
More. So, and it's going to be in the new studio, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be fantastic. I'm really excited about it.
Well, if you're there, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a lot. We all have different views, Ebony, Eric, and I, as it is, and then the 2 specialists that are going to change all the time. So it's going to be like nothing anyone's ever seen before. So you got to watch it, got to check it out. I think it's going to be a great time.
Tuning in. Congratulations, Kat.
Thank
That
you.
is so exciting, and thanks for being with us this morning.
Congrats.
Thousands of people across the U.S. are marking President Donald Trump's 100th day in office by marching in protest of his environmental policies. Organizers say that 300 other protest marches are expected around the country. Participants in the People's Climate March say they're objecting to Trump's rollback of restrictions on mining, oil drilling, and greenhouse gas emissions at coal-fired power plants, among other things. In Augusta, Maine, protesters outside the State House said they wanted to draw attention to the damage climate change can cause marginalized communities.
European Union leaders have also promised to embrace the British province of Northern Ireland if it were to unite with the Republic of Ireland. Irish Prime Minister Anna Canny asked the fellow members to acknowledge that Northern Ireland would automatically enter the EU in the event of unification with existing member states. EU leaders gave their political endorsement. Irish and EU legal experts say it's the position in international law. Some EU officials said the declaration was a statement of the obvious, but they stressed the summit was not taking a view on unification.
When we first meet Montaj Sohole at Sewanee University of Technology, he immediately invites us into his dorm. He tells us there's no Wi-Fi, shows us the broken TV in the viewing room, and the kitchen with only a sink.
This is where we usually wash our dishes here. So it's a crisis. It's very depressing.
The 27-year-old is struggling to break the cycle of poverty in his family and obtain a college degree. He says each day at what the government calls a historically disadvantaged university, the lack of resources conspires against him and his classmates.
It's very bad on the basis that we've been here almost 5 years, failing to proceed.
Step onto the campus of a top-tier university most students in South Africa can't afford, and the difference is stark. But the concerns run deeper than cosmetics. The government says students at all universities are being taught a Eurocentric patriarchal curriculum. Their professors are primarily white and 55 and over. If black and poor students are lucky enough to attend a university like this one, they say they sometimes feel out of place.
Mahmoud Abbas is going to Washington, D.C. this week. It's his first official visit to Donald Trump, and one Palestinian's hope would redraw relations with the White House and revive hopes to achieve peace with Israel. Trump and el-Sisi seem to be on good terms. That's why Abbas came to Cairo, to be well prepared for this crucial meeting with the American president. The two presidents have agreed to hold on the conditions Arab states have set for peace, an independent Palestinian state established on the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. In return, all Arab countries are willing to normalize ties with Israel. El-Sisi has been recently bringing the Palestinian crisis up on the regional agenda. Cairo has been meeting with Israeli and Palestinian officials in efforts to convince the two to sit again on the negotiating table. Coordination between el-Sisi and Abbas is essential. Egypt has for long played a significant role in the Palestinian crisis. After Cairo, Abbas will continue preparations for the U.S. trip by meeting Jordanian King Abdullah. The Palestinian president is expected to leave for Washington, D.C. on Monday. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
South Korea's highest-rated drama facing real-life conflict as China blocks streaming of the show popularly known as The Goblin. Pop culture, one of Korea's biggest exports, is just one of the victims in the spat over THAAD. The Thermal High-Altitude Defense System is designed to defend South Korea from a missile attack and has been a point of much debate. A recent suggestion by U.S. President Donald Trump for South Korea to foot a $1 billion bill for the system raised much anger. Washington has now reassured Seoul they will shoulder the costs. China considers the system a security threat, and its citizens are showing their displeasure by boycotting South Korea. Their absence is being felt. Here, sales have dropped nearly 60% since Chinese tourists stopped holidaying in South Korea.
I'm getting customers from Southeast Asia, but they don't spend as much as the Chinese.
South Korea has a major advantage as China relies heavily on Korean components for its own manufacturing industry. So any trade embargo would likely backfire, which means the bulk of South Korean exports worth more than $100 billion will be safe from any formal punitive measures.
I would not be happy. If he does a nuclear test, I will not be happy. And I can tell you also, I don't believe that the president of China, who is a very respected man, will be happy either.
Not happy mean military action?
I don't know. I mean, we'll see.
In this interview over the weekend, U.S. President Donald Trump offered an uncharacteristic compliment to DPRK leader Kim Jong-un.
And at a very young age, he was able to assume power. A lot of people, I'm sure, tried to take that power away, whether it was his uncle or anybody else. And he was able to do it. So obviously, he's a pretty smart cookie.
Now 101 days on the job, Trump is making resolving the nuclear crisis on the Korean Peninsula a major foreign policy test. Trump and his national security advisor refusing to take military options off the table.
So you need the viable option, the military option, to help make what you're doing diplomatically, economically, with sanctions, viable, to be able to resolve this problem short of what would be, as the president said, a major war.
Beijing wants to coax the parties back to negotiations through economic pressure. Discussions are underway at the United Nations for additional sanctions against Pyongyang. And Foreign Minister Wang Yi continues to encourage the U.S. to end its military exercises in the region.
Turkey has sacked almost 4,000 public officials from the civil service and military on suspicion of having links to the U.S.-based cleric Fethullah Gulen. It is the latest major purge since President Recep Tayyip Erdogan was granted sweeping new powers earlier this month. Those dismissed include Justice Ministry workers, Army staff, and Air Force pilots in new decrees issued under the state of emergency imposed after last year's failed coup, on which Erdogan blamed Gulen for instigating. Meantime, Turkey has also banned TV dating shows and blocked the popular online encyclopedia Wikipedia.
Venezuelan government opponents once more on the streets of Caracas, but this time to hold a vigil for those killed in nearly a month of protests against President Nicolás Maduro. All attempts to barter an understanding between both sides have failed dismally until now. On the plane returning from Cairo, Pope Francis confirmed the Vatican has been approached to once again mediate between Venezuela's government and its opponents, and is willing to do so, but this time with very clear preconditions.
I believe that this requires certain conditions, very clear conditions. Part of the opposition does not want this. It's a weird situation. The opposition is divided. On the other hand, it seems the conflict is worsening more and more, but something is moving.
The Pope indicated previous talks failed because the opposition was divided. But the Vatican has also been critical of the government's hardline position and repression against peaceful demonstrators. University students were here to mourn fellow student Juan Paulo Pernalete, whom they say died after being hit in the chest by a tear gas canister fired by riot police.
Today we pay tribute to Juan Pablo. We will remain here conquering the night, demonstrating that in the darkest night, students are light. That's when it's needed. When the people of Venezuela need more encouragement and hope, the students will be there for you.